Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Property. I'm your host, Cheryl Leong from Property Development Australia. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. So, at the Business of Property, we interview superstar guests in the property development space that share their expertise, their deals, and their stories to help empower, build, and grow our community of property developers. So hello to Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube land, and anyone that's watching us on the replay. Give me a shout out if you're here with us today in the comments section below. So renders. We've seen them. We've been wowed by those that look hyper realistic and not so wowed by the others that aren't so great. And that's what our guest today is going to be sharing with us. And our guest, Nora, who started her career in funds management but realized her true potential was in architectural design through 3D visualizations. She's the founder and director of Lamarr & Co., and her mission is to inspire others by bringing their design visions to life through the best 3D renderings you can find. So I'd love to invite Nora down to the Business of Property dance floor to share with us her expert tips on what to look out for in picking your 3D rendering specialist. So Nora, please come on down.
Thank you so much for that super warm welcome, Cheryl.
You're very welcome. It's wonderful to have you here today, Nora. So Nora, tell us a little bit about really how you got into the space of rendering when you have this background in funds management. Obviously, you can see where the similarities are.
Yeah, look, it actually started a few years ago. So I was helping my mum buy a property, and it was just after the pandemic had kicked off and the market was starting to warm up, and we were looking at all these amazing properties, and we'd look at the drawings. I could see the layout, I could see there was space and she could fit into it, and she just couldn't picture it. I tried to measure things out for her, and the properties that we were drawn to were the ones that had amazing renders. And I just couldn't understand why more property developers didn't have that, because for people that aren't in the industry, it gives them great comfort to understand what they're going to get, the finishes, the feel for the room, the space, the lighting. It really kind of brings it all together. And when I was looking into it, I realized it's something I really loved. I loved design. I loved interior design and architecture, and I just fell into it. So I started playing with it, and then eventually I formed my agency and now work with a few people within my team, and really love it. So my background is in funds management. I was a very good Moroccan daughter where I went to school and studied really hard, and I thought, if I work with people with money, I'd love it. And it turns out I love working with people. And in institutional funds management, you don't get to deal with lots of real people.
Yes.
But in this space, I get to connect with the developers or the architects and meet with them and understand what their vision is. And I'm a part of that. I can now point to buildings and tell my kids, like, I was a part of that. I helped make that happen. And I get a great sense of pride in doing it. So that's what excites me, helping people make their dreams come true. And that's just what lights me up. So bringing all those pieces together, that's where I came from and why I'm here.
And fantastic. And we're seeing renders becoming definitely more a must. It's almost mandatory if you want to sell a property off the plan in some way or form.
Mm-hmm.
People want to be able to see what that looks like. But I've seen, and I'm sure those of you who are watching as well have seen, renders that sort of look like, they're not quite 3D. They're very unrealistic, and then there's ones that are super hyper realistic, where you almost have to second guess and look extremely close as to whether it's real or not. So I know you've put together a bit of a presentation, and maybe we'll go through that and then we'll be able to identify. But the main thing is, like, how do you what are the things as developers here we need to look out for to be able to identify what's a good render and what's not a very good render?
Yeah, look, and that's what I'll talk through in our talk. So I'll talk through the process of how we create a render, but towards the end, I'll explain what are the common mistakes, and then talk through some real examples so you can get an idea of why something doesn't feel right. The heart of any render is to tell a story and provide a point of connection. So if your purpose is to be part of your amazing marketing suite, then what is the story you're trying to sell? What is the lifestyle you're trying to pitch to the end consumer? And there's that element of scarcity that not everyone gets to live here. And so you really want to pitch the best elements of the design to them. And so being able to get there is a bit of a combination of working with the artist, forming a team, and them understanding your vision and delivering on that outcome. So if you want, we can jump into the presentation now.
Well, let's definitely jump in. And anyone that's watching the live broadcast, please pop in your comments or questions. And I'd love to hear your experiences with renders as well.
Fantastic. All right. So today we're just going to go through everything you'll need to know, I guess, as an overview of architectural visualization. So from the modeling all the way through to post-production. And this helps you give an understanding of how our projects are created, but also how you can give professional feedback to make sure that the artist is really nailing your brief. Benefits. So as Cheryl's hit the nail on the head, 3D rendering has almost become a critical component of the property space. Previously, it was too expensive to get someone to do it and turned many people away, whereas now through the development of more powerful tools and software, the process is far more accessible to designers, property developers, and even architects. 3D renders are fast becoming the preferred method of communicating architectural design, and now it's set to be $6 billion by 2025. The key components that I love about 3D rendering is essentially how quick it can be created. So within the space of 2 weeks, you can have your first render. It'll show off all the textures, the lighting, the camera angle, and really start to create a story of who you want to see living in that space, and start using those marketing techniques to make that home or house feel like a home, so that the end consumer wants to purchase it. Okay, so a render consists of 3 parts: the modeling, the texturing, and the lighting. And if any of those are not done correctly, we can tell that the render isn't realistic. Okay, so the first step for any project is understanding the brief. It's surprising how many people come and they'll send the renders and they don't want to have a conversation. I highly recommend that you jump on the phone with anyone you're going to engage in a 3D render, talk about the project, your intention, who your end consumer is going to be. If you're going to be presenting something to a local council, then the images will be slightly different to that if it's going to be as part of your marketing campaign.
And just how is that so? Sorry to interrupt, Nora. And in what way will it be different?
So the suggestions made by the 3D artist will be different. So in one of the examples I'll show at the end, we worked with a local architect based in Sydney, and they were doing a development in Gosford, and they were trying to get a development approval across the line. If we're going to do that, we want to show the property far more from a really wide landscape view, from the street view. We want to show it at daytime so that you get the full features of what the building will look like, how the lighting and shadows will be cast, and put it in scale to the other towering buildings near it. If we're going to do it for a marketing campaign, then we're going to be selling the lifestyle, we're going to be selling the dream, and there'll be some romanticism put in with the lighting, with the finishes, softer lights, more people in the scene. We might make it more creative, if I can use that word, instead of it being, I guess, more plain, in a sense, in that it's going to be showing it as it should be and fit in with the natural environment, where we'll use a photo montage. So understanding what the intent is can help us deliver the outcome to the client and help them get it across the line. And in this instance, you want to save time and money and get the DA across the first time round, and not through, obviously, many iterations when you don't know how long that's going to be. So the other information to provide when you're having that first conversation is what materials and finishes you're going to be having with the building, the camera angles that you're thinking about and what you want to include, and then any reference images you might have from projects that you've done before or things that you've seen more recently with other competitors and the like.
In terms of camera angles, Nora, is this something that you you sort of advise on, or do you find that clients generally have an idea of how they want the camera angles to be?
Typically, it falls in two parts. I'll find that property developers are happy to say, I want a shot of the kitchen and the dining, and then it's up to my team and I to decide what is the best angle given the room composition and the lighting, and we will, propose what we think is the best one. Camera angles are really critical in the modelling process, in that once you get the camera angle, you build from there. So you want to make sure that everything in view is accurate, because it's not simple just to pivot the camera. You've got to rebuild the whole scene. So that's why that's important from the beginning. Whereas architects usually have very specific camera views that they want to have, and they may have used their own interior model like Lumion, which is an easier model to construct and manipulate, and they can provide those. So it just depends what you're after, and at the end of the day, it's always a team effort in terms of us providing the insights of what will work better given the space and dimensions of the room, and also what the client's after and what they want to showcase to their client.
Fabulous.
Yeah. All right. So the second step is modelling. So modelling can be a very tricky and finicky part. You can either start with a 3D model, which is typically what 3D artists want to start with, or a 2D plan that can be given from the client. What you'll find is that most architects use ArchViz and AutoCAD, and they can provide the CAD model to the artist. It's great when that happens because it really speeds up the process. The model is accurate from the beginning. There's no back and forth to make sure that the view is correct, and you're just starting with what the client actually wants. When it's not the 3D model, we will go through a couple of iterations of the model that's built by the artist to make sure that it's accurate and it's true to form. So once that's all correct, we then move on to the 3D rendering software. So you've got 3ds Max, Cinema 4D, Maya, and SketchUp. SketchUp is one of the simplest programs. It's very user-friendly. Almost anyone can use it. One of its main disadvantages is that the program's not really created for high-quality, realistic renders. Maya and Cinema 4D are used for the development of video games and 3D applications. They're also used for animated films, TVs, and things that use visual effects. So it's not necessarily, I can't say it, not really used for interior visualization.
Not needed.
I know, you choose a new word. It just means the programs were created for different purposes. So if you hear these different names, it doesn't really matter. But the one I love and have grown to use is 3D Max. So it is one of the most complex programs, but it gives lots of opportunities to create an image rendering. The most popular render engines that you use with it is called Corona Render and V-Ray. Now, that part's really exciting, so I'll move on to the most important part of the discussion, which is common mistakes. And the best way to see these is seeing it in person so that you understand what we're talking about. So, sharp edges. From experience, there are a lot of things that can make a photo that's not realistic. If you take a look at these images, you'll notice a very simplistic difference, that one has round edges and the other one doesn't. It's surprising how often this rule can be broken. There are many, many impressive architectural renders out there that use geometry with sharp edges. However, perfectly sharp edges don't exist in real life, and they shouldn't really happen in 3D renders either. The round edges, as you can see, makes the light and the reflections change, and the object has a smoother and more natural highlights to it. The next one is faceted geometry. So we want to make sure that the polygons are not natural to the visible to the human eye. One of the reasons for this can be a low poly count or incorrect smoothing or incorrect shaders. Sometimes it's enough just to raise the poly count to smooth it out, or worst case, the 3D artist has to redo the object, which may cost time. And it seems obvious, but when you're building many different objects within a render, sometimes when a client or when an artist is rushing, they leave these objects in not a perfect form, and then our eyes will be attracted to something feeling off and not feeling as real as it could be. Okay, the next one is scale, and it's definitely one of my pet peeves. And the easiest way to tell a render is done badly is just incorrectly scaled objects. So in this one, we can see we've got a giant woman and a really small man. As you know, our brains are supercomputers. We're always looking at images to test and see whether it's real. Should we believe it or shouldn't we? Making sure that each element within a render is accurate and scaled properly really helps the plausibility of the render. The next part is introducing some chaos. A failure of many 3D renders is that they just look too perfect. And I know sometimes when we think of hyper-realistic images, we want it to be perfect, but actually what feels perfect is sometimes seeing some chaos and randomization. So if you go to someone's house, even though it might look neat and tidy, the cushions won't perfectly be as they are in the first image. They'll be put to the side. There might be scratches on the wall. There might be dust on the windowsill. And these fine subtleties are what make the render feel more real. Another thing, when you look at landscaping or exterior images, if you ever went out and looked at your house, you wouldn't notice it, but looking at a render, the shade of grass or the blades of grass shouldn't be the same shade of green. They should have some variation in color and height, and that's the same thing we're looking for in 3D renders. There should be that randomization. Now, decor. The render has to tell a story, but there's no story without any characters. So adding some detail, such as decor, books and flowers, helps create the lifestyle that we're trying to sell to our clients. As humans, we love to decorate where we are. It tells us about our personality, our status, and it really shows what we want to focus off in our life. This can really help tell the story of the building and the property, whether it's luxurious, an opulent amount of lighting, and it feels inviting and warm, or if you want to create a dark, moody bar where it's, for secrets and long nights to be had. It's about creating that mood and making that inviting scene for people to be drawn into. Okay, 3D lighting. The third step is lighting. If you ask any veteran 3D artist, all of them will tell you that lighting is one of the most important parts of a render. With good lighting, even bad models and textures can look good, but without it, even the most perfect one will not look realistic. So let's have a look at these examples. So if you want to achieve a photorealistic render, it's important to mimic the lighting from real world environments. So basing the lighting setups in reality makes the viewers subconsciously interpret the CGI as far more believable. Sometimes it can be difficult to identify the characteristics of light because our eyes are adapted to different situations and changing how we perceive them. So if you consider, Cheryl, that if you're outside of a building and the sun's beaming down on them, the interior lights might be on in the building, but can you tell that they're on?
No.
Not yet, exactly. So if we fast forward to the nighttime, and these interior lights will actually appear far more stronger and even emit a warm tungsten color in contrast to a dark blue night sky. Once we go inside the building, these same lights lose that orange tint and now appear wider. So these characteristics of interior light do not change, but our perception does. The last few notes of lighting, which I really, really believe in, is that you really need to embrace shadows. Take a look at some renders and you'll notice that they're blasted with lots of light, vivid colors, high contrast, and it really wants to show it in a bright, opulent setting. I mean, luxury these days we associate with lots of light in the environment. And for beginner artists, sometimes they just use so much ambient light that it actually destroys the shadow, and it actually destroys the focus of the image when you don't let the shadows tell a part of the story. So here you can see in this example, the before and after. The one before has the same amount of light essentially everywhere. But the second one is far more pleasant to the eye. You can tell the light's coming in from the window. It's casting a beautiful shadow on the couch, and the bookcase has far more dimensionality to it. It lets you create the depth to the image. And then the second one is also challenging in that when you're doing bathrooms, sometimes there is no windows that go around it. So you're playing with all internal lights. And the trick here is to make sure that we're making the lights look realistic, not too yellow, not too white. We want it to look inviting and warm, and make sure that the temperature of the light's right too. All right, texturing. Ugh. So here we talk about textures in materials and their imperfections. So texturing materials are very different things. The best example is to show you, and the best way to do that is through physically based rendering, which is a methodology that aims to accurately represent the behavior of light and how it interacts with surfaces in reality. So if you're aiming for photorealistic results, understanding how to create physically based rendering results is a must. The main principles revolve around setting up the diffuse, reflection, and index of refraction of material to represent its real-world characteristics. The rules differ for metals and non-metals, but here we can say in this first render that you can really take a close look of the stone. We can see that it looks very perfect, almost like a bench top, whereas here, if you're actually doing an exterior render and you wanted that rough sandstone finish, you'd be using a texture like the one on the right. All right, imperfections. I feel like they're the secret sauce of what make a render come to life, and it's about using it in the context of each render. So in the real world, you'll notice dust, smudges, scratch, dirt, and other imperfections. Yet in 3D, most artists like to lean to perfection. Using imperfections making sense of your context adds that other layer of realism. This can be really subtle, but on a bench top, you can have some smudges, or you might have some undulation curves if it's a tiled bench top. It's about adding these imperfections in the right places to make it feel real and lived in. All right, the fifth step is the rendering part. So this is where we put it all together in the rendering, and we'll go through some of the examples here.
Oh, so we haven't even got to rendering.
I know. There's lots involved in it. So the camera.
So I can imagine it's a pain when you've got a developer that goes, "Oh, can I change this bit?" And you're going, "I've got to go through all these steps to get to the render bit."
I know. Well, and that's why we try. For example, Lamarr and Co, we have a process where we start with the camera angle. So what is the focus? Where do we want? And sometimes you get to the end and you're like, you know what, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good enough. We don't have enough height. We don't get to take advantage of, the kitchen and all of its high-end finishes. And it is part of the journey. But you always try to use what skill you have to try and go in the right direction. But as you know, with the work you do too, it's always about iterations and making sure you're getting closer to the right outcome for the clients. So the things here to look for with the camera angles when it comes to rendering is that you really want to stick to things that are physically possible. So it's hard to tell with this image because neither of us live at this space, but when you go to take a picture, and this is, I guess, critically important when you're looking at an image for a DA approval, development approval, is that you want to take it from the street view. You want to take it as if the council can walk around and they can recognise the height of the building from where they're standing. The general rule is that the camera should not be, or the camera should be between 50 to 170 centimetres above the ground. Any more than that, and it can feel uncomfortable for some reason. We don't realise it, but that would be why. I mean, now we're used to drones and helicopters, so we can have more of an elevated view, but depending on what the purpose of the render is, it will dictate what height you want to take it at. And the similar when you're doing for interior renders, you want to follow the same conventions in normal photography. Lens effects can be really important when you want to put the focus on the building, its finishes, and you really want to blur out the background. You don't want to focus on that when you're doing a marketing campaign. You want to showcase the property and not so much the neighbours. You want to sell the dream of it being a tropical oasis and how beautiful it will be to live in Queensland on one of the tropical islands there. And that's what you're really trying to focus here. In this image, it's just really showing you how within the rendering process, we can focus on one of the finishes or one of the fixtures that helps create that lifestyle that the client wants to live in. All right. Okay, final step. Cheryl, you excited?
We're on the home stretch. I'm like, just show it to me.
So post-production. So here there's here we just talk about how an image is kind of created and the many layers that the artist has to play with to get the right image. or to get the right render for you. So there are lots of tools that can be used to improve an image, and most of the time Photoshop is what's used. So you can enhance the colors, add effects like bloom and glare from lights refracting off different things, increase the depth of an image, or change the sky. It's also usually used to add people in the renders, and it's a low-cost way and has lots of possibilities to it. So in the next couple of renders, I'll show you how we increase the quality of your work by, or increase the speed of which we can deliver renders by using rendered elements. Now, these rendered elements are separate images that are included within the render of a 3ds Max render. It enables the 3ds Max software to automatically break your image into these little elements, so you don't need extra time to render them. And here we can say the different components of the single render. You can use the color, the reflections, the shadows, the mattes. It really gives fine control over the final image when using composition or image editing applications, and then reassemble the final image from its component elements. So, for example, to increase the depth of the image, the Z depth is being overlapped and cut out in the Photoshop in the top main image. And also the light element can be broken down into element, which means fixing and enhancing light situations a lot easier. So that's the final rendered image. And as you can tell, there's many different components within the render to make it feel like it's been taken in real life. All right. So for this one, it's a bit more simplistic. We've got the building that we start off with. We've got a dull sky and just the car here. In the second one, we've changed the atmosphere, made it lighter. We've really enhanced the lighting within the house, and we've added a person heading towards their car. And then finally, we wanted to create more of a moodier outcome when we're playing with this image, and we've created a really foreboding sky. We've decreased the global lighting within the image. And yeah, it just creates a story of the person rushing to their car. All right. And so interior renders are really exquisite. And I have to say, they're the ones that I spend most of my time when I'm looking at others, trying to decide, is it real or isn't it? Like, what components have happened? And I feel like they're the part that really draws the buyers in, because they want to feel like this is what it's going to look like when I buy my house.
This is where you should have put a cake, and then I would have said, is it cake? Is it cake? Really? I mean, I look at that couch and it looks really plush. It looks inviting. It looks like velvet. I mean, the what's it called? That sandbag? No, what do you call it?
Bag. I know. I was thinking of the same thing. The chair.
Yes.
I've forgotten what it's called too, but yeah. So you look from the first image to the second. It's almost hard to see where the enhancements have been made, but it's essentially changing the contrast and the highlights. And really, in the second one, we're just exaggerating the velvet. Like here, we're also exaggerating the light bounces off the light above. It's making it feel like you can almost feel the texture.
Like you can almost just go and step in there and sit.
I know. And start drawing on the velvet. You know, you can write words and like draw. Anyway, that's where my mind goes to. But you're a part of this city landscape with this luxurious high-end apartment. That could be my house. I can believe this image, that it's real.
Yeah.
All right. So now we'll go into the good and the bad. So I'll get you, Cheryl, to let me know what you think about the things you like about this image and what you don't like, and I'll explain, I guess, from my point of view, what I'm looking for.
Are they of the same property, or is it a different property?
I didn't have a bad one that I'd done, so I've used one from another artist, from another area.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's start with the one on the left to begin with. Where shall we start? There's so many things. I mean, the man and the dog, that's just wrong. It's just sort of pasted on. I mean, the whole angle is wrong. The shadows are wrong. It really looks like something out of a kid's sort of nursery rhyme book, where you've got the house that's really sort of tilted. It's the sky. The sky looks like they've taken a photo and just sort of pasted it in there. all the I was gonna say sizing, like the car to the house to the person and the trees and the rocks. Um, yeah, let's just say that's not very good. That's
I
the one on the left.
yeah. So I would say for the one on the left, it lacks focus. What are we
Mm.
exactly looking at? So yes, we're looking at a house which probably isn't the finest finish, but it just still looks two-dimensional. The shadows don't do it any favors. You've got that big shadow cast over the property. It's not inviting you in. You've got a really lighter and brighter sky, besides the colors all being dull, which isn't appealing. But it's just a mismatch, and your eyes are just drawn to all of the inconsistencies. You look at the ground, and it's not really grass. It's kind of this weird texture of green. The person looks foreboding. What is that dark figure? You're just left with more questions than answers as to what was the point of this render. And instead, it should make you feel inviting and want to go in. The one on the right is for a development in Queensland that we had done recently, and it's about using this in their marketing campaign. You want to see this townhouse being inviting, lots of light, natural bright light, a beautiful background to show what it's going to be like living in this beautiful street, clearly showing off where the cars are, so it's drawing you in terms of where you'll be parking and then where the entry is, and really just painting a picture of the high-end property that you'll be purchasing. You can tell the difference in the quality of the renders also from the finish. You've got sharp, clear lines with the finishes of the tree versus the other one, and just the holistic view looks far more complete. So that's what I'll be looking for here.
I
All
like
right.
that you can almost see the cars like through the
Yeah,
garage. You can almost sort of go, "Ooh, what's that car in there? Looks like a," and
exactly.
and so there's another element of sort of that realism, that you've got that depth in that image. And I really, I like the trees and so on as well.
Yeah. And one of the other things we want to showcase the finishes on the side of the building, so that from one angle you're getting a view of what the whole property looks like,
Mm.
instead of it just being flat on and you can't see that. But yeah, it was a really fun project to work on, and it's interesting too that one of the other like hacks I'll share is that when you're looking at renders, look at the windows. What are they reflecting? Because sometimes they just have like this white sheen to show that it's a window, or it might have like a curtain over it so you can't see inside. That's not normal. Like, you don't normally see, particularly in a high rise, they all look one shade of white. Like, you want to see the trees or the other buildings or whatever it is to make it feel like the environment's bigger than just what the render you're looking at. So that's another
Yeah.
thing to look for. All right. Interior render. So I think interior renders are really the cornerstone of what helps for marketing campaigns, because you really want to show how people are going to be living. Later on, I'll give some more information about the psychology of property, but you guys would know this inside out. People buy with their hearts and rationalize with their heads. They want to feel like they've moved up in the world and have that success. And whether it's to the end consumer or if it's to someone who's an investor, they want to buy in a good market where they're going to get capital growth and have good quality clients. So that's the point of the render, is to communicate that this property is status and someone of status will want to live here. So here with the internal render, this is one of the worst ones I could find, but really just to dramatize what looks good but doesn't. I will not critique it for its interior design because it is not to my to my taste, but you can kind of see some of the elements I was talking about. So here we've got this beautiful, strange colored rug with sharp edges. Normally rugs are soft and malleable and they fall across and they're soft. They're not, I guess, a platform that you step on, and they're quite harsh. The wooden floors are kind of this murky texture. I'm not sure what that material is. It should be wood, but it's not in slats. Again, when you take a look outside, You can see there's this building outside, but it's incredibly pixelated. So it's not, it obviously adds that other sense that it's not right, it's not real. You've got another beautiful pendant here, but it's completely miniaturized. Like it should be bigger. Given the grandiousness of this room, like
Yes.
it should be a taller ceiling with a chandelier or something, or at least a better pendant light. And just smaller features. So the person's created the room without any thought. Where are the bedside tables? What's the purpose of the room? Why is there a random chair there? Like, where's the flow? How am I going to use this space? And clearly you're not looking at the pixelated neighbour in the background. So just a bit of fun. So that's fine. And the one on the right is for that same development in Queensland, where they had this really sophisticated chic interior with a combination of grey and whites. You just really want to see the flow of the space and showcase the high-end finishes that are available there, with the bar on the left and then the elongated kitchen in the right-hand corner. Open, light and bright, an inviting space to entertain and relax. Alrighty. So now I'll just talk you through some of the, a sped up version of what happens so you can pull it all together. As we're starting off with, the first part is obviously the modelling, and we want to make sure this is right. This particular one was for a DA approval in Gosford that I was telling you about. So the modelling, we then do all the furnishing and decor. In this instance, it's the landscaping. We then add the texture and lighting. This was for full daylight, so we wanted to make sure the shadows reflected that. We then add the elements. So the client specified they wanted a photo montage at daytime, in the middle of the day. And we also had a drone take a picture of what the windows will be reflecting. This is the image that will sit in this photo. And then we also added people to the element. And this is the final render. So putting that all together, getting the right scale is a team effort to make sure that it looks accurate and believable. Again, interior, we'll start with the model. We add the decor and finishes, and then we add the lighting and textures to it. Once again, the background here is a photo montage, so that's the actual view the clients will have when they acquire the property. So now just on to the psychology of property. As you guys know very well, people buy with emotion and then justify logic afterwards. One of the benefits of 3D renders is that you get to make an exceptional first impression. And in competitive markets, it counts. The 3D renders create the connection between the life that they want and the property that they see. It helps them buy the lifestyle they dream of. The end client problem is that they want to buy a house or rent in a space that suits their lifestyle and not just buy a home. They want it to give them that ego stroke. They want to make sure that they're purchasing in the right space. And I think 3D renders gives that advantage, that once you have more of them, clients get a real sense of what it's going to be like to live in that environment. Okay, so the return on investment when it comes to 3D renders. I really like this quote because I felt like it was actually a true reflection of what happens with 3D renders and why I love it, in that creativity belongs to the artist in each of us. So to create means to relate. When you're creating a development, Cheryl, do you just think about what you like, or do you think about what your end consumer will like?
Oh, definitely. It's around who is the end buyer, what are they looking for? Are they owner-occupiers? Are they investors? So it's very much about invoking a sense of what the end product's going to be.
Yeah, and I think too with property developers, and I feel like kindred spirits, we're problem solvers. Like, what is the outcome we want to get? Yes, we want to sell the property, but to who and why and where, and what's the budget constraints, and how am I going to make it work so it's still a reflection of my style and quality, and something I'm going to be proud of to tell friends and family, and essentially bring on more work in the future. And that's what I feel like 3D renders bring out the best, because it's not 3D artist show, it's about creating your vision and bringing that to life. One of the best things about 3D artistry is that you can do many different renders of different components of the build, and it creates more awareness. And just like when we see with established dwellings, some photographers, at least here in Newcastle, they take 20, 30 photos of property. So you get every nook and cranny of it. And as you know, the more you know of something, the more you're able to fall in love with it. So it helps get engaged buyers, which can lead to faster pre-sales, and it helps sell the lifestyle connection with the buyer. Just for reference, for those who aren't familiar with 3D renders, you can get interior and exterior renders, which are the ones I showed you today. You can also get 360-degree views. You can have a walkthrough animation and get a design floor plan. One of the other hacks I would share is that walkthroughs can be a bit pricey because you typically want them to run for 30 seconds and like take you through the house. You can also get 3D artists that can do a 360-degree walkthrough. So you have one space and then they do a 360-degree view. Then you use your camera to go to the next room and get another view. So it can help do it in a more cost-effective way, but still showcases the space and quality of the build in an easy way.
I do find that it's almost a bit like, you've got kids and, my kids are young, so they're into all Minecraft and Roblox. So it almost feels like you're traveling somewhere. Like if you've got, I actually quite enjoy those 360-degree ones because you're like, I want to go to the living room. All right, I'm going to head here. And I'm going to, I want to check out the second bedroom. So I'm going to travel up around. Just exactly like this. And I can look up and down and around and just get a real sense of the space.
So when Minecraft has high-end finishes like this, I will play it. But until then,
yes,
my poor kids are going to be upset that I don't play with them in Minecraft just yet.
No, I don't. I just sort of go, what's happening here?
I know.
And it actually sort of irks me a little bit that it's not more realistic looking, that it's so sort of little blocks.
Pixelated,
I
know.
And pixelated. So like, people who have OCD, they're like, why is it like the people with square heads? And why is the pig a square?
Yeah, I guess it's know your audience. They love that because they can create their worlds and it's easy.
And so this is the adult world here.
But to be honest, there's actually the metaverse for us. So
there you go. Yes,
add to the presentation, but it's a truly fascinating time in that there are now 3D artists creating virtual worlds that they sell for millions of dollars. You can become a property developer in the metaverse and be on the main strips that people that love gaming want to be a part of. You can create avatars, you can create rooms for people that they live in, and it's all 3D. It's we're all going to have avatars soon, Cheryl. So like you need to get on to
I need to get on to this. I'm pretty sure my daughter's already created my avatar about 20 million times now.
I know.
But I quite like if it means that we can build something in much quicker than we can now, and under 9 or 12 months, I think I much prefer that. So it's worth looking into. And this is fantastic. Thank you so much. And I didn't realize how involved it was. Like I said, the numerous steps that are involved in actually bringing a render together and what to look out for. I mean, I've seen all sorts of different renders, like you said, ones that were pretty terrible, and then great ones where like this, there's light and depth and shadow and, like I said, the imperfections as well. Really getting people. I mean, I think if particularly with COVID and how lockdown, like so many people have gotten used to the fact that they can, that they don't need to be going into display suites, that they can have a look at what a 3D render or walkthrough will be, and they can do it in the comfort of their own homes.
Yeah, I really think it is now the way of the future. And as we get more competitive in the market, it's the way to differentiate, to have those high-end renders where people believe that they've already experienced it, they know what they're buying, and just gives them more confidence that they're making a great decision versus, those that, like my mum, they can't do it. They can't look at the drawing. They can't picture the beautiful interior design board and how that's all going to look. So I think this is a no-brainer. But yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for putting that together, Nora. And for those of you who are listening and you've got projects and you're looking to take them up to marketing, definitely get in touch with Nora. Tell us a little bit about what your business and its services and how you can help developers.
Yeah, look, so we're a 3D rendering agency. We essentially help property developers and architects take their visions to life. We help focus on the key attributes of the build, and first of all understand the focus of what the rendering is from council or if it's for marketing, and then help you guys bring out the best. So we've got a number of packages that start with just a number of renders to those that include 360-degree views all the way through to animation. It's all about showcasing your property, its features, and selling it to your end client. So be it investors or if it's to end consumers, first home buyers, or whatever the case may be. It's about understanding who that is and then making sure that the renders tell a story of the luxury and the high-end finishes, and making sure that they see and feel the perceived value that they're getting by buying your property.
Fantastic. Love it. And what is the best way for people to get in contact with you?
So the best way to get in contact with me is either here on Facebook, so through Nora Lamarr, or with me on my website, so Lamarr & Co., or you can also get in contact with me on LinkedIn. So I'm pretty active in that space too. And yeah, happy to take any questions you might have about 3D rendering or the like. And yeah, love to get to know you and your colleagues, Cheryl, and see how I could help.
Thank you so much. So lamarrandco.com. There's no AU, is there?
No.
It's just .com. Get in contact with Nora, have a chat to her about your projects and how you can bring it to life. And those of you, I mean, like I said, it was really insightful to be able to identify and really understand what goes on behind the scenes in a render. And so when you're speaking to your rendering artist, to ask about those things, about, how can we, those pillows look way too starchy. Can we have a little bit of more natural, pillow placement? The lighting doesn't seem right. So these are the elements that we really need to look out for when we're when we're looking for the right sort of renders, but the right sort of rendering artists as well in their work. So thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here, Nora, and sharing your thoughts and your expertise on rendering. And we'll see you again in the community. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks so much, Cheryl.
Excellent. We'll see you again. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode of The Business of Property. If you feel that you like what we have to say and you want to visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Business of Property, where you can find all our past episodes. And if you found value in today's show and want more, hit the like button and get notified when a new episode goes up. So till next time, keep well, and I'll see you again. Take care. Bye-bye.